Previously we have explained that Lieutenant Colonel May was a king's messenger, but that alone does not answer the question of how did this British officer find himself in Suhl, northern Germany, at a factory that made the first 10 under and over shotguns in the world, and walked out with one, in a nice leather fitted case with his name neatly branded on the top of it. Maybe we'll never find out the real answer to this mystery, but on the other hand we have a statement from his son who in writing claims that his father designed the shotgun. From Lieutenant Colonel May's diaries, papers, photographs, medals and his shotgun, we can determine much information of his life and character. He was a war hero, not a Walter Mitty bragger or a pogo pen pusher in the office. Harry, as his men called him, was a ridgy-dig, over-the-top leader of men, one of the few that survived 4 years in the greatest human mincing machine ever devised. Then, as if that was not enough, he volunteered in 1919 to serve in the British expedition to northern Russia at Archangel. This was the Allies' doomed attempt to assist the White Russians, who were under attack from Lenin and Trotsky to Bolshevik soldiers. Harry won the Italian silver medal for military valor, which is equivalent in frequency and prestige to the British Military Cross. And that was apt, as he had previously won the British Military Cross and then won the bar to that medal, which means he effectively won that one twice, so the Italian silver medal was like a third military cross. Likewise, it was only won for bravery under fire. His citation reads,
"By virtue of the authority which has been extended to me by His Britannic Majesty's Government, I hereby have the honour of conferring upon you, Lieutenant, Acting Major, Henry May, DSO, Royal Field Artillery, the Military Cross, in recognition of your gallant conduct in the field. The following is the official account of your conduct for which the award has been made. At VP 466 on the 22nd and 23rd of July, this officer, who had just returned from patrol duty lasting 6 hours, went forward to take over the front line there at a critical time with a party of 50 other ranks. He consolidated position, observed for Russian artillery, and succeeded in holding up the enemy's advance until a counterattack took place some 8 hours later. He then went forward with counterattack and assisted in retaking positions. During the whole time he was constantly in danger and working under the most trying circumstances, but he performed his duty in a cheerful and willing manner. His splendid example had a steadying effect on all ranks. On the 24th, this officer commanded the party of 80 men that attacked and took enemy camp 2 versts east of VP 448 and severely defeated some 300 enemy. He set a magnificent example to his men and himself, rushed a machine gun team, killing the enemy gunner at his post. To his command and leadership, undoubtedly the greatest success of this fine operation is due. I heartily congratulate you upon the honour which has thus been conferred upon you. Signed, Edmund Ironside, Major General Commanding-in-Chief, Allied Forces, Archangel."
Our Harry shared the winning of this medal with 2 other famous but antithetical people, the famous writer Ernest Hemingway and Field Marshal Erwin Rommel. From another recommendation by one of his commanding officers,
"This officer has commanded a company working 48 4-inch Stokes mortars during the Somme offensive. He has throughout shown the greatest efficiency in the command of his company and exceptional gallantry in himself, constantly reconnoitring gun positions during the very strenuous fighting during the advance. On one occasion, when a flank smoke barrage was required unexpectedly, and all the men of his company had been sent out on the line for more ammunition, Captain May worked a gun by himself, putting up the required barrage. Captain May is a man of quite exceptional courage and resource in action."
Our Harry Also won the Russian Order of St. Michael and St. George with gold sash and sword, and was being mentioned in dispatches 6 times, all of which are not gained for just handing out the cigarettes at the right time.
18th of May 1917. My dear May, most hearty congratulations on your mention in dispatches, which I saw with very great pleasure in yesterday's Times. Your excellent work has not, in my opinion, been recognised in a way it might have been, but a mention in the present list is a great honour. More power to your elbow. I am sorry such a long distance separates us and prevents me running over to shake you by the hand. I was most distressed to hear of the heavy casualties you had some time ago. My kindest regards to you and, of course, all your officers. Yours sincerely, G.P. Pollitt.
While serving with the Australians in northern Russia, the men gave him one of their slouch hats, and he is pictured proudly wearing it at the time in this photograph. Here is an article from the Edinburgh Evening Post describing how this British officer won this great honour.
Australian troops in Russia, not coming away if they can help it, most terrible fighters. The Press Association's special correspondent lately on the Archangel and Murmansk fronts writes as follows. During the war, a great deal was written about the Australians. They were lauded to the skies, possibly praised too much, and to the disadvantage of other troops of the Empire. However, one cannot get away from the fact that they are magnificent soldiers, and that the small handful in North Russia who went out with the 45th and 46th Fusiliers have carried on what is now tradition. When they arrived in Archangel, they were formed into an Australian detachment 200 strong. Certainly there were among them 1 or 2 Canadians, New Zealanders, Scotsmen and Irishmen, all equally tough, but the great majority were Australians who came to fight in 1914 and have not been home since. Furthermore, they are not going now if they can help it. They are moving heaven and earth to get to South Russia. Their first exploit on the railway front, where they have been all the time, was to charge, although only 50 strong, 600 Bolsheviks in the woods. Led by a British officer, Major May, RFA DSO, they scattered the enemy and then on the battlefield paid their commander the highest honour an Australian soldier can bestow. They snatched the major's cap off, threw it away, and crammed an Australian slouch hat on its place. They also demanded, and the demand was acceded to, that the major should in future command the detachment. How they got wristwatches. An idea of the tendencies of the men may be gained from the remark one man who was asked if he had got the time. He replied that he had not got a watch, and had no hope of getting one until the next raid. What is one to do with men whose motto is, "Every dead Bolshevik is worth a wristwatch," the reference being to the fact that most Bolsheviks wear wristwatches, frequently valuable ones, which they have looted. One always felt perfectly safe with these men. For sheer reckless, careless bravery, they could not possibly be surpassed. Their discipline too was excellent. When the British Major got command of them, he made them fall in and told them he was going to trust them absolutely to maintain discipline amongst themselves, and would therefore not appoint any sentries in any disciplinary capacity. He never had any reason to regret his action. Now the expedition has returned, one may allude to one breach of the regulations in which the whole detachment participated. It was a case of mutiny. They had been fighting for 2 days and were ordered back for a rest. They went back but petitioned to be allowed to return to the front. Petition was refused. The whole crowd then marched back to the line with appropriate comments and stayed there. From the Edinburgh Evening Dispatch, October the 18th, 1919, page 4.
Harry May was obviously popular with his superior officers and his men. They made cartoons of him that he considered so complimentary that he kept them with his papers for the rest of his life. He was photographed on more than one occasion with King George V, and as a confidant of the king, a king's messenger, he was sent with the king's correspondence to his friends and relations in Europe. He had to be known as a discreet gentleman. Lieutenant Colonel May was truly a man who could walk with kings, nor lose the common touch. In World War II he had joined the RAF as a pilot in the Battle of Britain and rose again through the ranks to be a squadron leader. He had served his country from India to France and from Belgium to Russia. He had no need to brag or mislead his son, or anyone else for that matter. So who was right? Was it Krieghoff that designed the first Under and Over internal hammer shotgun? Or was that honour claimed by Lieutenant Colonel May? All of us alive today may never really know this answer, but in our opinion, the answer is probably both. The key word is designed, and that word can be misused and misunderstood by both parties, and most of us not involved in the inventing and patent industry. It would have been impossible for Lieutenant Colonel May to supply full workshop drawings, including specifications and tolerances to Krieghoff, as even if he had visited the factory previously, he would not have known the choices of machinery, or what machinery they had available at that time to manufacture all of the shotgun. More than likely, the drawings and the concept that our Harry, son Captain May, refers to will be a requirement, an order, a requisition, which would have included the overall dimensions and weight. As Lieutenant Colonel May was travelling the world and he was heavily involved in the ammunition business, in his diaries he lists techniques, machines, specifications and components, time taken and the number of staff of manufacturing 12-gauge cartridges. Almost like an industrial spy, but he also lists the joint stock ownership of both the German and English companies owned by Noble Industries and the investment in Noble by the Royal House of Windsor. In that context, interchanges of industrial information would have been permitted within ICI Noble, who owned both the German RWS and Ely ammunition factories. He needed his own shotgun for testing ammunition and wrote articles for the British shooting magazines. He was a man who knew what he wanted. He would have known that the side-by-side double-barrel shotgun obscures aerial or fast-moving targets much more than ribbed single-barrel guns. These days, many competitive shooters describe shooting with a side-by-side like pointing a plank. The gun that Lieutenant Colonel May required had to be very special, as Purdy's price for a shotgun only reached £1,000 in 1968. In 1928, a hand-engraved masterpiece, side by side, would have at the most only cost £300. That figure was 3 times the tradesman's annual wages. Lieutenant Colonel May must have had requirements and specifications that demanded an under and over receiver for his barrels. For Purdy to quote £1,000, it must have been a huge project. Purdy did not make an under and over action until well into the 1950s. In many parts of the world, the inventor is the man with the innovation or novelty. He sees the need for an item and sees how that requirement is filled. He is the man who patents his idea with primitive drawings. He then takes that idea to the engineer, who then has to make the workshop drawings. He specifies the materials, the tolerances to suit the machines and skills he has available. He is sometimes, in some parts of the world, described as the designer or the engineer. He has to, as in this case, invent many processes to make the original idea work. He has to redesign the concept to make it suit the required specifications, as in this case, very compact, and to make it work. So Heinrich Krieghoff would quite rightly patent his hookless shotgun action. Both men should have some credit for inventing and designing this masterpiece of history. One man's idea, the inventor, and the designer manufactures it. This is most often the combination involved in the creation of the firearms we know today. Next time we will study other interesting exhibits in the Owen Guns Trust Museum.